Yeah, hello and welcome to another episode of the weekly Spielworxx chat, season 2, as we now call it. My name is Uli Blennemann. So the new year has started as shitty as the old year has ended. But what can we do? Nothing. And hello, Markus. Yeah, he's saying, yes, I'm in time. Of course I am. Of course I am. I'm sitting here for 7 hours waiting that the stream is about to start, so of course, I'm in time. And hello, Rainer. Greetings to Munich. And Claude, good to see you. Well, my French is one word, merci. Bonjour de Quebec, I think it is. Hello, Pöppelschieber. Wie geht's? Tabletop Gaming Blog. Good to see you. It's Oliver, right? Hopefully, this is correct. So, let me start with some good news regarding Pax Pamir and another run of the German edition. Whirligig will do, that is a fact. Another English language print run of Pax Pamir this year. So, most likely, let me say, with 99% chance I'm joining the production, and so there will be a German edition of Pax Pamir as well. So lots of people are asking me about this. I don't know what the price will be. I don't know how many copies I have to take, but I will take some copies. So the game should be available again in a German edition late this year, I guess. And Marcus is saying there's already one pre-order, so now it moved from 99% probability to 100% probability that I'm doing another run of the game. Um, and Rainer is saying you put the interview with Cole and Pax Pamir from Conworks on your page. Yeah, but you have to see the audio on that is pretty bad. So while Cole and Drew are very clear, and my audio on my part is pretty bad, so it's not on your end. That was my problem, but at least it's there, and hopefully you'll find it somewhat useful. Yeah, Cole and Drew, they are two of the most knowledgeable and nicest people in the whole gaming industry, in the whole gaming hobby. So, if you are interested in Pax Pamir German edition, please watch the news section on my website or subscribe to my very irregular Spielworxx newsletter. And the info how to subscribe you will also find on my website. And by the way, if you have questions or comments today, as usual, please put them in the chat window so that I can respond. News: the Origins Games Convention in Columbus, Ohio has been moved from June to late September, early October of this year. And the organizers stated in a mail that visitors will have to wear masks and keep their distancing. So while I can really imagine how difficult it is for the convention site, for all the convention workers, for the staff at a convention site, I'm sure they are having a very difficult time because can't open. But I'm not sure that this is a good move to have a major convention, and the Origins Games Convention has more than 20,000 people in the last couple of years. That I'm not sure if holding such a convention in 2021 is a good idea. So, and I will definitely pass. Um, some other news that are not as good, but hardly surprising. Um, Recently, two pretty prominent designers, so Phil Eklund and Daniele Tascini, they caught flack from the gaming community for some of their statements. And first, I think that they deserve all the flack they got. Eklund's essays in the rules, or wherever he posted them, his footnotes and glossaries in the rules were always very problematic. Often he tried to sell his observations as something new in history. And then he had weird opinions, for example, on colonization. But recently he moved into the COVID-19 denier camp. And this, in my opinion, is very dangerous because his words will surely influence some gamers and in a very really bad and dangerous way. And Tacchini, he seems to be one of these white guys who think they can tell anyone what is racism and what isn't. So, but I'm really not surprised that this is happening in our gaming world, in our small tabletop gaming world, because why should tabletop gaming be better or more enlightened than the rest of the world? This is something that is, we are not living on our nice gaming island. And we all have a long way to go and clearly spell out what is wrong, or when you see something that you think is wrong. And please, not for a second, think that I'm feeling myself better or morally superior. No, I made a lot of mistakes. I'm still making a lot of mistakes, and I still have to improve. So as anybody, as anyone. But what I found really good is how firmly the gaming industry or the parts that were involved here acted. So both Boards and Dice and Hans im Glück Verlag here in Germany, they distance themselves from Tacchini, so they won't work with him in the future. So that was, in my opinion, a very good and strong reaction. So really good. And of course, another interesting question in this regard is, can you or do you want to divide between author, in this way designer, so between author and work? And in my opinion, everybody has to decide this for themselves. And this is not only true for gaming, this is also true for movies, so Roman Polanski, anyone? Or in literature. So for example, if you look at Nobel Award winner Peter Handke, his books, novels are outstanding, really outstanding, among the very best. But as a person, in my opinion, he is really a major asshole. So, but everybody has to divide or decide this for themselves. And for example, I still have one Eklund game remaining, that is Pax Porfiana, and I will keep it. I think it's a great game. It makes the right arguments, and but I totally understand if somebody is saying, well, Eklund, no, I can't stand what he's doing, what he's saying, how he's acting. All his games have to leave my home. So I totally understand. I think, but I think it's an important question. Author, work. Let me see. I think there were some comments here. So let me scroll back. There are lots of comments here. Regarding origins, I think Marcus Purple Shiba is correct. I guess they have a contract they have to fulfill as long as no one official forbids the con. Most probably this is true. They have to say something, and for insurance and for other things. I think we will see the same thing at other major convention sites. But attending such a convention, I can't imagine. I think Phil Eklund should write to a medical or science magazine to get his essays published if he's so convinced he's right. Yeah, the essays I was talking about, that was not COVID-19, but you have lots of deniers for various reasons, of course. But the essays are in so-called historical essays, and I almost threw Pax Renaissance before I sold it to the wall, because that is so stupid. You may know I'm an historian by profession, although this is many moons ago. And what he's writing in footnotes in between the rules is either 40 years old, common knowledge in history, but he's saying, well, oh, I found this and this, so really stupid or totally weird. And there were others even who said that the game contradicts what he's saying. So even this is not consistent. But this is, Phil, as you know, is a rocket scientist, and he knows everything better anyway. Matt, hello Matt, by the way. Matt is saying, Phil Eklund is one of those people who seem to think rules for they, none for me. No, right, absolutely, absolutely. And Tabletop Games blog, I didn't hear about Hans im Glück, that's good to hear. Yeah, this is regarding Daniele Tascini, and he's co-author of Marco Polo and Marco Polo 2, and if you take a look at their website, Hans im Glück. So it's in German and in English. So they have a strong reaction, and anything they are making, because they won't reprint the games first. Second, anything they are making now from the games they are donating. So this is really, in my opinion, a very good move. I'm going to review BIOS Mega Fauna, but now from that angle of how Philip's view are reflected in the game and how they affect the game experience. Yeah, again, Pax Porfiana, in my opinion, Phil Eklund, 100% Phil Eklund, and this is too strong a word, he invented basically the Pax system, but he at least the basics were done by him. In my opinion, still, Pax Porfiana is a fantastic game. Although the production is shitty, at least in this edition I'm having, the rules are a terrible mess. Because Phil, again, the rocket scientist, he thought everybody has to, it has to be clear for everybody. If I understand it, everybody else has to. And in that game, and this is, I'm not joking, 30% of the rules are in the glossary. So they aren't even in the rules, but in the glossary part. This is what Phil is. Yeah. Matt, I think you can only separate the art from the artist when the artist is dead. Good thing. Otherwise, money spent on the artist's works may directly go towards something disagreeable. This is a very good position. I totally understand this. Of course, anything. So let's say you buy a Daniele Tascini game, you will most probably help the designer. On the other hand, as Hans im Glück also pointed out, the games that are already in the distribution channel and at retailers, Hans im Glück told people to buy the games from retailers, because retailers in COVID-19 are already suffering anyway. So any support is or may be a good thing. But this is a terribly complex issue, and of course we shouldn't be morally too high on our horse, because we may end up having nothing to read or game or watch. So is anybody watching still Weinstein movies, even when he wasn't the director or producer? So this is terribly complex and tough to say, but this is a good point that you are taking here. Daniel, I'm sorry I'm late. What did I miss? Yeah, everything. I want to close this down in about 10 seconds. 9, 8, no. You didn't miss that much. I think we were talking about these fine fellows, Eklund and Tascini. And of course, but I won't go into detail here. Everybody can look up what fine retailer, online house and fulfillment service Fun-Again is. Or the owner of Fun-Again is Jeff de Boer, but I won't go into details here. So something else. So viewer Franz Josef, he has sent me a mail in advance. And so first, thank you very much. He was referring to my interview at 5 Games for Doomsday, which is several years old. In the interview, I said that among war games, there's often and now let's spell this in English. In German, it's Dichotomie. I think it's dichotomy, so difference between gameplay and simulation value. So I mentioned Empire of the Sun as an example of a game that is both a great game, so gameplay is exciting, and a good simulation. So simulating an incredible complex topic as the war in the Pacific from 41 till 45, including some politics and on land, on ground, and on air. So this, in my opinion, Empire of the Sun is a very good example for a great war game that is also game, so great war game, and also being a great simulation. And Franz Josef, he asked which other war games I think are great games and good simulation. So good question. And first, this is purely now my personal preference, and it's influenced by what I played lately. And so I'm just giving here 3 examples that are coming to mind. And note Empire of the Sun that I mentioned before. This is basically the most complex game that I would say is a good game and a good simulation. Because if a game has or may have a great simulation value but has 100 pages of rules and the playing time is 500 hours, then hardly anyone can play it. So it can't be, in my opinion, a great game. And by the way, if you have some comments here, what you think are great war games that are also great simulations, please let me know in the chat window. So my first example is Washington's War by Gmt Games, designer Mark Herman. Washington's War and its predecessor, We the People, are very tense games. So We the People, of course, was also the first card-driven game, and most CDGs, in my opinion, are good games. Because the decision making from a hand of cards and the multi-use cards, they make for extremely exciting gameplay. At the same time, because normally you're only playing one card and then the other player is doing this or the next player, downtime is very low, which is also a major plus. But Washington's War, at a very abstract level, of course, is also a good simulation because the game tells you that in this conflict, in the War of the American Independence, it was most important to win the hearts and minds of the people and not winning lots of battles in a row. So the game integrates, in my opinion, politics very well. And the second example is Fredrick the Great. So these are the rules of Fredrick the Great. You see, this is an older game. It's the first edition by SPI from 1975, designer Frank Davis. And the new edition, was done by Avalon Hill in 1982. So, although the game is very old, it's in some aspects, on some aspects you notice this, but yet it is very elegant, and it has just a few rules to simulate the 7 Years' War, or I need to say yearly campaigns from the 7 Years' War. And I think Frank Davis, as a designer, he had to be very disciplined because the original SPI edition appeared first in Strategy and Tactics magazine. So he had only some pages of rules available and just a maximum of 200 cardboard playing pieces for the game. And the game is almost chess-like, with armies maneuvering and the other player is counter-marching, counter-maneuvering. And what becomes apparent very well is the inner position of Prussia and Frederick the Great in this conflict. So this is well handled. And of course, if you are having an inner position, you have some advantages. So I think also the game is a little bit on the long side. But Davis, as I mentioned earlier, he was very wise that he isn't modeling the whole war, but just yearly campaigns. And then the next scenario is the next year and so on. So this is Well done. Third example is Clash of Monarchs, which I mentioned here earlier by GMT Games and designer Bob Kalinowski, a game that I'm currently playing. It is again the 7 Years' War, now for up to 4 players. And yes, the rules are somewhat opaque and playing time is also a little bit too long, but it gives a very good feel of the overall situation of the war's participants. And it also scales down very well. This is, by the way, I did not mention this, also a CDG. But it scales down very well from the operational theater view to the tactical view when you are fighting a battle. You are drawing chits, but you are not moving units to a battle board. This would be way too long. So very well done. And besides showing the advantages and problems of the fighting powers, the game also shows the financial constraints of all the powers, because you have to keep the armies in the field and you have to spend your talas on them, and you never have enough of them, especially France, which was in the middle of the 18th century at the very end of their empire, so they had hardly any money anymore. And the game shows this very well. But in general, of course, we can argue for 10 hours what makes a good game and what makes a good simulation. So my quick comments here are a good war game from a gaming point of view. This has to be a game that is mechanically simple, so the rules are not too complex. The rules are not too long, so 50, 60, 70 pages rules booklet, not too good for a game. And of course, the overall playing time doesn't have to or must not be too long. And of course, some players, for them is 2 hours maximum. For some others, they are saying in a war game, 8 hours is short. So you have to see. Plus, the downtime should be reasonably low. And you probably, or a few of you, know the old hex and counter war games, where one side first moved all the units and then had combat with all the units, while the other player they could basically read Tolstoy's War and Peace in between turns. So this is not, in my opinion, what a good game should be. A good war game from a simulation point of view. So first, I do not expect that a game simulates a war or battle exactly. No game can do this, of course, and this is not simulating. But I do expect that a good war game as a simulation is well researched, at least, and that it makes an argument. So what was important historically? Is it possible to recreate the event on the gaming table, or the central aspects of it? This, in my opinion, makes a good war game as a simulation. So let me see. Is there anything here? Matze is there. Hello, Spieletreffenverteiler. So no question, comments on here. So what I also wanted to point out, now I gave 3 plus the Empire of the Sun examples, so 4 games in total, and 3 are 3DGs, Empire of the Sun, Washington's Wars, Clash of Monarchs. What I'm not saying that necessarily all CDGs are great simulations. Not at all. So for example, if we look at Path of Glory by GMT Games, designer Ted Racer, this is one of the most popular and best-selling war games of the last 20 years. I think it is now in its 5th or 6th edition, and it has sold in the English language edition alone more than 50,000 copies, which for a war game on the First World War is an excellent number, of course. And I've played this game more than once, and I still own it. And I think it's a tremendous game. It's a very tense and exciting game, really a game, but it has nothing to do, almost nothing to do with the First World War from a simulation point of view. It has so many things wrong in there that it really hurts. And I even sold it once and then bought it back a year later when I played another game with a friend's copy. So I have a love-hate relationship here. I think it's really a fantastic game, but not a good simulation. So I'm not saying that all CDGs are necessarily great games and great simulations, but by nature they divide very well, or they have a low downtime, which is excellent in my opinion. And we will talk in March a lot more about war games because I will have most probably, but he has said yes, Mark Herman here as a guest. So Mark Herman, of course, is the designer of Empire of the Sun. He is the designer of Washington's War, and we will talk about war games and about his amazing career he had. He's now, as you may know, retired, but he's still designing games, of course. So and he's a friend of mine, so we have met quite a few times, and I'm excited to talk to him then here in March. Okay, moving to Tharos now. I've now a fixed date for the Tharos Kickstarter. It will be February 19, which is a Friday. Most probably this will be a 17 days campaign. And here I said earlier, it will be a very modest campaign. And by this I mean that I will only do 1,000 copies of Tharos in total. And the Kickstarter game will be only a single shipping unit. So there won't be any stretch goals or any extras. This is a game that you may get. And the printed 1,000 copies, they will not only go to, or not all go to Kickstarter. Some of them are going to Japan and Canada, and some will be reserved for my website. And it also looks like now that a very limited number of copies will go to Spielschmiede, which is a German crowdfunding platform, which I will try to use, most probably. And of course, I want to learn from this Kickstarter campaign, and I will make lots of mistakes, but this will help me with the next campaign. And as I also said earlier, Tharos won't go into distribution for at least, if at all, for at least 12 months. So this is a guarantee. You won't see the game afterwards immediately, 4 weeks in general distribution. And because I pushed the Kickstarter to February 17, so I pushed it back a little bit, the Spielworxx chat in 2 weeks will allow me to cover gameplay of Bernd Scholl's Tharos in detail. I promised this for this week, but so I have a little bit of extra time. There's a question, Andrex Jer, what will be the price? I don't know yet. It will be, if you know that Spielworxx is always on the pricey side, it will be a little bit lower than usual, but still, if you compare this to hobby mass market game, so like Carcassonne or Catan, it is still a pricey game. Doing 1,000 copies is costly. Rainer, thank you. He's saying Tharos gameplay is great, looking forward to this. Thanks a lot. And if you are asking, Uli, why are you doing just 1,000 copies? Why aren't you printing as many copies as demand is? Yeah, first, I don't really think for my first Kickstarter, nobody really knows Spielworxx that the demand is that huge. But right now in Europe, and the game will be printed in Europe, the big, huge problem is getting wooden components. So the big boys, Asmodee and some others, they have cornered the market for wooden supplies. So in an ideal world, I would say, well, this is a Kickstarter campaign, I need some extras, some copies are going to Japan, some are going to Spieleschmiede. And in an ideal world, I would say, well, this is the number, I'm asking the printer to do that number. but I already had to order the wood for the game last year, because in Europe it is now about, especially for a small printer, it's about 5 months till you can even get stuff. So if I'm turning files in, it's another at least 5 months at this moment, and I want to have a Kickstarter campaign that is fulfilled quickly. And this is my goal. So, but I hope, and Matt is here in the chat, that this is not any hindrance for his Squaring Circle World, which will be the next game. And it will be also a Kickstarter. Here I hope that I do as many copies as demand is. So what will be Mo? Hello Mo first. So will the funding goal be 500 copies? No, it will be lower. I'm doing this game. I don't know yet the final price, and I don't know what the funding goal will be. I have to be careful. If it's too low, then people are saying, well, he doesn't need the money. Spielworxx needs the money. Really, I need the money, but I'll have to see what it will be. How the name of the game on Spieleschmiede, the name is here. So that's the game, Tharos. It will be the same name there. Tharos, and in Germany, and the designer is Bernd Scholz. And of course, you can already look this up, but I have to add a lot at BGG, so the game has a dedicated BGG page, but there will be of course more news on my website. So if you look this up on my website in the news section, there is at least some info over there. Any questions here for war games, for Tharos, or are we done? So as I still can say, for people who missed the first part, Bloody Daniel, for example, that brute. So I talked about Eklund and I talked about Taschini, but you can read this at the relevant websites. And on war games, we will talk in lots more detail in March here with the expert, with Mark Herman. So next week I'll have a guest, and when I just said Daniel is a brute, we have another one. We have troublemaker Ben Maddox of 5 Games for Doomsday, and he is the first repeat guest, and we will look back to the gaming year 2020, and I'm sure with Ben we will surely find other interesting topics. So I'm really looking forward to next week. But there's another question from Mo. He doesn't want to let me go. Will all Spielworxx games be on Kickstarter from here on? The reason I ask is because a game like mine or Colonialism would be a hard sell on Kickstarter. I don't know. So I have to say, first, for this year, for the 4 games I'm doing, or 4 plus the special one, Schrille Stille, I'm planning that they are going to Kickstarter. But let's say that I notice that Kickstarter isn't working at all for Spielworxx, then I'm not doing it. And you're right, some games, so let's say your Middle Passage game, let's say it's to be published and it's going to Kickstarter. It will be very difficult because it will get so much flack from uninformed people that it can destroy the whole campaign. So we have to be careful. But such a game like yours, the cost, so serious games, I think they can be done on Kickstarter, but the preparation time has to be very long, and this has to be planned very well. And still it can bomb because we notice the attention span of some people. They just hear there's a game on slavery on Kickstarter. So how can they do this? How dare they do this? And they won't maybe even read anything on the campaign's page. So we have to be careful. and I don't know. I don't know how to handle this, and yeah, we'll see. So thank you all for your time, and if you would like to see a special topic discussed, or have a specific question that you'd like to ask in advance, like Franz Josef did on the war games, please do so. Please drop me a mail at uli@spielworxx.de. That is uli@spielworxx.de. Support the Iserlohn Roosters. That is most important. We signed a new player today, a left winger forward. So we are on good track. So till next week, bleibt gesund. Black Lives Matter. Bye bye.